Oh, a little late. All right, we're going to get started again. And so you're going to go like after this, I think? So I'm going to introduce the topic, and then you're going to do the apex, the beef. Yeah.
Cross-site scripting beef.
The coolest of cross-site scripting. So we're going to get started with HTML injection, which is effectively, we're going to talk about cross-site scripting. And I'm going to introduce cross-site scripting with HTML injection, and then Conrad,
sideways.
Is that better? Here we go. And then Conrad's
Smiley face.
going to continue with part 2, where he's going to talk about some advanced cross-site scripting, or using advanced tools. I suppose all cross-site scripting is kind of sort of the same, but being able to use powerful tools certainly ups the game a little bit. All right, so we're going to go to the DNS lookup page. Okay, I think I remember where DNS lookup is. It's in A1 other injection.
Dude, you've done so much work on this thing.
I know. It is like
First one,
it's getting very hard to remember where stuff goes. I think I already mentioned that. So it's A1 other injection, command injection, DNS lookup, and the menu is broken out into A1 SQL injection and A1 other injection. It's not necessarily a mistake. The 2013 OWASP, it appears as if they're going to collapse the injection category down into just A1 injection. They're not going to have it be SQL injection anymore, or just SQL injection, I should say. So I figure what I do is I would arrange the menu to make it easier to collapse later on when they release the 2013. So the OWASP top 10 is I think the best way to put it is it's the most costly, top 10 most costly attacks, or the riskiest attacks to organizations that are web vulnerabilities. And they release it about once every 3 years and update it. And so currently it's like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and broken authentication and session management. Really not much change between 07 and 10, and then they're coming out with 13. And as you might imagine, there's a lot more injection because there's a lot more injection opportunities now, and some of the items on the bottom of the list have shuffled. So if you want to check it out, they do have a preview of it already released. Okay. So we're back on the DNS lookup page. This is a really good page to start with if you're just trying to get a handle on cross-site scripting or HTML injection. So cross-site scripting in general is modifying the source code that appears to the user in the browser. So, PHP, earlier we used an injection to have PHP incorporate a little bit of extra HTML into the HTML page that got served back to the browser. Typically, in examples on the internet, you're often going to see cross-site scripting done literally with scripts, JavaScript, for example, or some old examples might even be VB script, but I don't think we see that much anymore. But it doesn't have to be JavaScript. It could be just HTML, for example. In fact, it seems like most of the cross-site scripting examples technically probably could be called HTML injection because they use HTML script tags to carry the JavaScript into the site. When it gets reflected back, the script tags, of course, change the context from HTML to JavaScript and execute the JavaScript. So we're going to look at HTML injection first. In the hints, if you click on hints, it's the second hint, HTML injection hints. So let's work our way towards this. So we're going to put in our canary, turn on intercept, and just kind of follow this process of that we developed earlier. And here's canary, so we're going to go a little bit quicker. And let's just try to see if some characters that we could use are going to get encoded or not. So I'm going to send in the canary tag. Of course, it's not a real tag, doesn't matter. The point is we're just trying to see if we can get some special characters to go in. While we're at it, let's send a slash. Those come in handy. Maybe send some double quotes. And an attribute. Those are pretty handy. Forward that on into the site. Control U. Oops. Yep, I got caching turned off. So let me try that again, and we'll catch it on the intercept, on the response and the intercept on the way back. So intercept is on. We'll send the request, and then we'll just stop here on the response. 8 matches, because we're logged in as Canary 2, so that's one of the matches. That's not a reflection. And then we have the logged in username, and username equals. And then we have Canary in the hints, because there's examples. So, okay, there's ours. So what we do not see here is we don't see those characters have been encoded. So whenever a site outputs dynamic output, I'll define dynamic here in a second, I guess, but if they're going to send dynamic output to the page, they need to encode it first using the correct encoding. This happens to be landing in the HTML context, so it should be HTML encoded. If you're outputting a variable into a JavaScript string, for example, then you need to use the JavaScript encoding. There's lots of other kinds of encoding, LDAP, XML, so on and so on. But one thing they all have in common is they're very powerful defenses because they do not attempt to detect bad and stop it. They simply try to render everything, good and bad, unexecutable. So it's more powerful defense against script injections than filtering is going to be, because there's always something that's going to get past the filter eventually if you try hard enough. But output encoding simply renders everything unexecutable. So you don't have to worry about new attacks that you don't really know about yet, that you haven't got a filter accounted for. All right, so the HTML is not encoded. This is a good sign for us, bad sign for the site. And we are landing already in an easy HTML context. We don't even need a prefix and a suffix. We landed like right in a text element. So this one's going to be kind of almost like a training exercise. No prefix needed, no suffix needed, there's no filtering going on, there's no encoding. So we'll forward this on. And we can tell it's not just the word hello, but it's bold and the font's larger, indicating that the H1 tag did execute. If you're not really sure if it's executing, just try something else, like turning it red or something like that. I don't know, does blink still work?
Inject Clippy.
So try blink, something like that. So we have a confirmed cross-site scripting vulnerability in this page. And let's see if we can ramp up from a trivial exercise to something a little more real world. And by the way, if you're doing vulnerability assessment or even pen testing, for example, professionally, in my opinion, it's not a good idea to put examples like that into your report. Reason is that people aren't going to take it seriously. right? It's like, who cares if you can kind of sort of deface the site? It's not really showing the true risk to the site or to the company, and so you're kind of doing, in my opinion, a disservice if you include only things like that in the reports. It's better to take some time to develop a little library of more devastating attacks, or attacks that more accurately show the risk that the company is actually facing, so that they can make a decision based on the real risk. And if they still choose not to fix it or whatever, so be it. It's their choice to accept the risk or not, assuming there's no external regulation or what have you. But they should at least be able to make the decision based on the actual risk and not some JavaScript pop-up box or whatever. So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox so we can get on here. So in the hints, I've already drawn up a couple of examples for you to use. And for once, I even tested them, so I think they might work. So, I don't promise to offer that service in the future, though, usually in too much of a hurry. So typically, if they work on my machine, I ship it. I guess you get what you pay for. So, all right, so let's go ahead and send in Canary again, and then we'll talk about what this more realistic injection does. This is one of the injections I have kind of in my toolbox that I keep handy for when a real demo is needed. Okay, we're going to go to the decoder, and we're going to encode this as URL because we don't want to smash the Apache server that has to try to parse this thing. And let's take a look at what we're trying to inject. Use Notepad. Oh, sorry. 1 second. I'll have to go get the text. Let's see, I got it in decoder. Okay, whoever can read that, you're making us look bad. Stop it. All right. Okay. This, or a variation of this, is something I've been using for a while. I actually talked about injecting these kinds of examples at the sites at Marshall last year at the AID conference. And in that context, we were talking about using these kind of scripts to silently attack the web storage, extract the information out of it, add information to the web storage, change it, delete it, what have you. And what this does in a nutshell is we have some information that we fill out. We have a host and a URL that we're going to construct. And then this section here is just going to generate one of those AJAX objects. Down here, this is some code to make a request to another website. And then here's a little HTML that displays a username and a password box. Okay. One of the features of Matilde that you can use, let's see, let me release the proxy so I can show you this. If you go to the either others and data capture pages, or there happens to be a shortcut right here on the menu bar to view captured data. So I've set up a couple of pages in here, and one is captured data, but there's another one, capture data. And what happens is if you can somehow get someone to visit this page, even if it's a background request that come out of AJAX, it doesn't matter how they visit the page, they just need to visit the page. What that page will do is it'll write down the cookies, the URL, and the post parameters that are sent in to the database, and it'll also write down that same information to a text file if you prefer that format. As you might imagine, the captured data page is simply displaying a table, the table that it's writing everything down to. So we visited the page, voluntarily in this case, and it captured our username and our UID, because those are in the cookies, the PHP session, and it captured the URL query parameters that were sent in. So I added this page, I think a couple years ago, because some folks, including Adrian, were using the site and capture the flags, and I thought this would be cool to have in there. And you know, you could try to trick the administrator to go onto the page and get their session ID, grab it, put it in your cookie, and become the administrator, and so on. So it's there to support that effort. And then in the view capture data, you can see it's just displaying a record of our capture. So let's just clear it out. Go back to our injection page. Okay, and this is going to be kind of subtle, so we'll have to watch Burp pretty carefully to see what's going on. Let's go back to the decoder and get the encoded version. That's a big one. Aren't you glad the decoder tab is there? Thank goodness. Okay, so it went in and encoded, but the Apache server will decode that, and then PHP incorporated our whatever we type, and incorporates that into the response, and you can see it's been output onto the page inside of a script tag. So here's the extra HTML. Okay, let's let this go on to the Firefox browser. And this is what it does. So guess what happens next? So the HTML is not real complicated, but there is a couple of subtle details. One thing is it doesn't try to use local styles. I purposely let the HTML inherit the styles of whatever site it gets injected into, and it tends to look kind of like it should fit in that site. I mean, it's never perfect, you know, but it's going to be a little bit closer, and it's easier than custom crafting the injection for each individual site. The other thing is I do a popover, because you just never really know where your injection is going to land, and it could be in a really silly spot, like on the right-hand menu bar, or up at the top in the, you know, up here in the picture, or something weird. And it's going to be kind of obvious to most users if you just inline the code, if it doesn't happen to fall into a nice lucky spot. So I make it a hover div, and that way it covers up the page, and it always lands in the middle, and it just kind of looks legitimate. So we'll just put something in here.
Hey Jeremy, is it possible that you could include like jQuery or something like that and do a modal window, make it even that much more realistic?
Yeah, but jQuery is a pretty good sized library, and you would need to either
jQuery.min?
It's still pretty good size.
Okay.
I mean, the answer is definitely. It's just your payload's starting to get pretty. I mean, this payload's already pretty good size as it is, but and certainly we could make it shorter. We could bend this one, for example.
Right.
But yeah, you definitely could do it. I'm not sure if there's some maybe easier ways. You know, one of the things on the jQuery page you can do is you can tell the page what functionality you need and uncheck all the other boxes and download a custom jQuery. Maybe that would be one way to have it easier. One of the things I like about that is jQuery is extremely common. Maybe the site would already have the libraries there. Maybe you could just use their library.
Just leverage what was already there.
Right. And then the other thing is that people were really used to the jQuery look and feel. I mean, I've even got it in here. You know, I finally gave in, right? So because it makes the sites look kind of like Apple Android-ish behavior, which is really cool right now, so everybody's kind of doing it. So advantages, disadvantages. Certainly if the site's already importing jQuery, which there's a halfway decent chance that they are anyway, hey, why not?
Probably hosted.
Use their code.
Sure.
So, okay, let's hit submit. Okay, notice that burp is capturing, but we never left the page. However, we did intercept a request. So what's happening is this Ajax is firing off a request in the background. That way we don't get any kind of page refresh. And we'll forward that, and then there actually is a response that comes back, and the box disappears, and you're able to use the site again. So go over to view captured data, turn the intercept off so we can just get on over there and look. And there's the record. So it's pretty realistic looking because the box pops up and kind of blocks the site, which to most normal users, I mean, they're not going to know how to get around that, and they're not going to fire up Firebug and delete the hack, So it looks pretty real. They think they can't use the page because you've overlaid it. They submit their credentials, the box goes away, and they can use the site again. Seems plausible. So it's a pretty good demonstration of the true risk of these types of injections. So let's take the same injection on over to the document viewer. Which is also under A1 HTML injection document viewer. So one of the things I try to do with the menu is if document viewer has like 5 vulnerabilities, I try to put it in 5 places in the menu, so it's you have a good chance of finding what you want. If you notice that the page has a vulnerability, but the menu doesn't reference it in the proper way, you can drop me a tweet or whatever, or send me an email. Email address is on the home page of this site. It's weaponized at gmail.com. It's not a secret or anything. All right, and then we remember this page. It was the one that had the frame. We looked at it earlier today. But we're going to have to do a little more work to get this injection to actually work. And this page does not encode the path that you were looking for when it outputs it. Okay, here's our target. Let's make some notes. So we figured out what our prefix needs to be earlier. It was close the source tag, or excuse me, close the source attribute, close the iframe tag. And then our payload's going to go right there. And then we need to suffix it with open a new tag. A variable, double quote, because we're running up against this double quote here. And then that'll finish out the rest of this tag. I think that'll work. Find out in a minute. Let's go back over to decoder. Go back up to the top. So we'll add that in as our prefix. We'll add this part in as our suffix. Of course, this is referring back to the exercise we did this morning. And we'll see if this fits. replace the variable, submit, and let's see if it kind of worked out. Okay, there's the beginning of our code. So it doesn't look like it was a really good fit in this location here, because it looks like it might land in like 2 different spots. So we'll have to see if this works out. Yep, it did land in 2 different spots. Interesting. So it landed in both the description field, and then it also landed in the middle of a source attribute. So let's see what happens when this one forwards back. Okay, well, it looks like maybe at least one of the 2 injections worked. Both of them worked. Bummer. So that's going to mess up the attack because it doesn't look realistic. Okay, so in order to fix this, probably what we want to do is purposely try to craft our prefixes and suffixes in such a way that it breaks one of the 2 injections on purpose. Does that make sense? That way only one box would pop up. And unfortunately, it looks like both of them work. That's going to be a dead giveaway. So let's try one more time. So let's try to break the iframe one. We'll make the source attribute something crazy that can't possibly exist, and hopefully that'll break it. And then hopefully the other one will work. The other one being the one that lands in the middle of that text field where it says currently viewing document, whatever. Like this one really should just be, it should just land in the middle of some single quotes. Oh, even crazier. All right, now it's coming completely unglued. So we're going to need a little more work before we're going to be able to get this one to work. I guess I'll cop out and leave that as an exercise for the reader. Or, of course, the easy thing to do would just be go find some other page, because the one thing about cross-site scripting problems is if there's one spot that's not encoding the output, chances are there's probably 100. Sites tend to either be not vulnerable at all, or they tend to be really vulnerable. There's usually not too many. They're just going to have, one cross-site scripting flaw or something like that. If sites are under heavy remediation, that tends to be why they would only have like one flaw somewhere. They missed a spot, or the system regressed because they added a new page. They had all the cross-site scripting errors fixed last year, but they roll out a new page this year and they forgot to code the new page correctly. Or more likely, a completely different developer coded the new page and just didn't know. That kind of stuff happens. But you can use these HTML injection hints to recreate what we did today. So the reason I put them in these text areas is some of these injections do not copy well if you try to screen scrape them. So for those, I try to put them in text areas to make it more likely that you'll have success if you copy and paste. All right, so that is, generally speaking, cross-site scripting in a nutshell. We already talked about prefixes and suffixes earlier. So cross-site scripting is just taking some script and getting it to be incorporated into the script that's already on the page naturally anyway, so that we can add some extra functionality to the page that wasn't intended. So given that, next we're going to have Conrad cover cross-site scripting, where he's going to inject some scripts that's going to give him control of the browser. We're going to take it up a level. And this is also a fantastic demo to help demonstrate risk to the client so that they can make the appropriate decision about whether they want to accept the true risk or not. So we'll take a very short break, come back at 2:03, and start with the cross-site scripting part 2.